St. Alphonsus, Those Called to the Religious State. Chapter 8. Answer to a Young Man. I read in your letter that some time ago you felt inspired by God to become a religious, and that afterwards many doubts arose in your mind, and especially this one, that without becoming a religious, you might sanctify yourself also in the world. I will answer your letter briefly, for should you wish to read something more complete, you can read a little work of mine, which has already been printed, under the title Counsels Concerning Religious Vocation, in which I have treated this matter more fully. Here I will only say briefly that this point of the choice of a state of life is of the greatest importance, as upon it depends our eternal salvation. He who chooses the state to which God calls him will save himself with facility. And for him who does not obey the divine call, it will be difficult, yes, morally impossible, to save himself. The greatest number of those who are damned for not having corresponded to the call of God. In order, therefore, that you may be able to choose that state which will be the surest for attaining eternal salvation, consider that your soul is immortal, and that the only end for which God has placed you in this world was, not certainly that you may acquire money and honors on this earth, and thus live a comfortable and delightful life, but that by holy virtues you may merit eternal life, and the end life everlasting. Romans 5:22. In the day of judgment, it will avail you nothing to have advanced your family and to have made a figure in the world. It will only avail you to have served and loved Jesus Christ, who is to be your judge. You have a thought which tells you that you will also be able to sanctify yourself by remaining in the world. Yes, my dear sir, you will be able, but it is difficult. And if you are truly called by God to the religious state, and yet remain in the world, it is, as I have said above, morally impossible, because those helps will be denied you, which God has prepared for you in religion, and without them you will not save yourself. To sanctify yourself, it is necessary for you to employ the means, such as to avoid evil occasions, to remain detached from earthly goods, to live a life recollected in God, and to maintain this, it is necessary to receive the sacraments frequently, to make your meditation, your spiritual reading, and to perform other devout exercises every day. Otherwise, it is impossible to preserve the spirit of fervor. Now, it is difficult, not to say impossible, to practice all this in the midst of the noise and the disturbances of the world. For family affairs, the necessities of the house, the complaints of parents, the quarrels and persecutions with which the world is so full, will keep your mind so occupied by cares and fears that you will barely be able, in the evening, to recommend yourself to God, and even this will be done with many distractions. You would wish to make your meditation, to read spiritual books, to receive Holy Communion often, to visit every day the sacrament of the altar, but from all this you will be prevented by the affairs of the world, and the little you do will be imperfect, because it is done in the midst of 1,000 distractions, and with coldness of heart. Your life will then be always unquiet, and your death more unquiet still. On one side, worldly friends will not fail to inspire you with a fear of embracing the religious life, as being a hard life and full of troubles. On the other, the world offers you amusements, money, and a contented life. Reflect well, and do not allow yourself to be led into error. Be persuaded that the world is a traitor that makes promises, and does not care about the fulfillment of them. It offers you, indeed, all these earthly things, but suppose it should give them to you. Could it also give you peace of soul? No. God only can give true peace. The soul is created only for God, to love Him in this life and to enjoy Him in the next, and therefore God only can content it. All the pleasures and riches of the earth cannot give true peace. Nay, those who in this life abound the most with such goods are the most troubled and afflicted. As Solomon confesses, who had them in abundance, all, he says, is vanity and affliction of spirit. Ecclesiastes 1:14. If the world with its goods could make us happy, the rich, the great, the monarchs, who are in no want of wealth, honors, and amusements, would be fully contented. But experience shows how it is with these mighty ones of the earth. The greater they are, the greater are the vexations, fears, and afflictions they have to suffer. A poor Capuchin lay brother, who goes about girded with a cord over a sackcloth, who lives on beans, and sleeps in a small cell on a little straw, is more contented than a prince with all his gilded trappings and riches, who has every day a sumptuous table, and who goes half sick to bed under a rich canopy, unable to sleep on account of the anguish which drives sleep away. He's a fool who loves the world and not God, said St. Philip Neri. And if these worldlings live such an unquiet life, much more unquiet still will be their death, when the priest at their side will intimate to them that they are about to be chased away from the world, saying, "Depart hence, Christian soul, from this world. Embrace the crucifix, for this world is at an end for you." The misery is that in the world they think little of God, and just as little of the next life, where they must remain forever. All or almost all their thoughts are given to the things of this earth, and this is the cause that their life is so unhappy, and their death still more. Nevertheless, that you may ascertain what state you ought to embrace, imagine yourself at the point of death, and choose that one which you would then wish to have chosen. Should you have erred by neglecting the divine call in order to follow your own inclinations and to live with more liberty, there will then be no longer time to remedy the error. Consider that everything here below will come to an end. The fashion of this world passeth away. 1 Corinthians 7:31. The scenes of this world must finish for each one of us. Everything passes, and death draws near, and at every step we take, we approach nearer to it, and through death nearer to eternity. For this we are born. Man shall go into the house of his eternity. Ecclesiastes 12:5. Death will be upon us when we least think of it. Alas, when death draws near, what will then appear all the goods of this world, but the unreal pageantry of a theater, vanities, lies, and foolishness? And what profit will it then be, as Jesus Christ warns us, if we should have gained the whole world and lost our souls? Matthew 16:26. It will help us only to die an unhappy death. On the contrary, a young man who has left the world to give himself entirely to Jesus Christ, how contented will he feel as he passes his days in the solitude of his cell, far from the tumult of the world and the dangers of losing God, which are in the world. In the monastery he will not have the entertainments of music, theaters, and balls, but he will have God to console him and to make him enjoy peace. I mean all that peace which is possible in this valley of tears, into which everyone is sent to suffer and to merit by his patience that full peace which is prepared for him in heaven. But in this life even, far from the pastimes of the world, one loving look cast from time to time on the crucifix, one "My God," said with a sigh of love, will console him more than all the pastimes and feasts of the world, which leave only bitterness behind them. And if he lives content in such a life, more content will he be still at his death at having chosen the religious state. How much will it then console him to have spent his life in prayer, in spiritual reading, in mortification, and in other exercises of devotion, especially if he has been in an order employed in saving souls by preaching and hearing confessions, things which at his death will all increase his confidence in Jesus Christ, who is truly grateful and liberal in rewarding those who have labored for his glory. But let us come to a conclusion with regard to your vocation. Since the Lord has called you to leave the world and to be entirely his in religion, I tell you, rejoice and tremble at the same time. Rejoice on the one hand, and always thank the Lord, because to be called by God to a perfect life is a grace which he does not give to all. He hath not done in like manner to every nation. Psalms 147:20. On the other hand, tremble, because if you do not follow the divine call, you will put your eternal salvation in great danger. It is not my intention here to relate to you the many examples of young men who, because they made no account of their vocation, have lived a miserable life and died a horrible death. Hold for certain that, as God has called you, you will never have peace if you remain in the world, and at your death you will be very unquiet on account of the remorse that then will torment you for having neglected to obey God, who had called you to the religious state. At the end of your letter, you express a wish to learn from me whether, in case you should not have the courage to enter religion, it would be better to marry, as your parents wish, or to become a secular priest. I answer, the married state I cannot recommend to you, because St. Paul does not counsel it to anyone, except there be a necessity for it, arising out of habitual incontinence, which necessity, I hold for certain, does not exist in your case. With regard, then, to the state of a secular priest, take notice that a secular priest has on him all the obligations of a priest, and all the distractions and dangers of a layman. For living in the midst of the world, he cannot avoid the troubles which arise from his own household and from his parents, and cannot be free from the dangers to which his soul is exposed. He will have temptations in his own house, being unable to exclude women from it, whether relatives or servants, nor prevent other strangers from coming to see them. You should then stay there altogether retired in a separate room, and attend only to divine things. Now, this it is very difficult to practice, and therefore small, and very small, is the number of those priests who attend to their perfection in their own houses. On the contrary, entering a monastery of strict observance, you will be freed from the disagreeable duty of thinking about your food and clothing, because there the order provides you with all. There you will not have your parents to come and continually trouble you with all the disturbances that happen in their house. There no women enter to disturb your mind, and thus far from the tumult of the world you will have no one to hinder you in your prayers and your recollection. I have said a monastery of strict observance, because if you want to enter another, where they live more freely, it is better for you to stay at home and attend there to the salvation of your soul as well as you can. For entering an order where the spirit is relaxed, you expose yourself to the dangers of being lost, though you should enter with the resolution to attend to prayer and to the things of God only. Yet, carried along by the bad example of your companions, and seeing yourself derided and even persecuted if you do not live as they do, you will leave off all your devotions and do as the others do, as experience shows it to be commonly the case. But should God give you the grace of vocation, be careful to preserve it by recommending yourself often to Jesus and Mary in holy prayer. I know that if you resolve to give yourself entirely to God, the devil from that moment will increase his efforts to tempt you to fall into sin, and especially to make you entirely his and to remain his. I conclude by offering you the assurance of my respectful consideration. I pray the Lord to make you belong entirely to himself and remain, etc. End of chapter 8.